And look who's coming up.
Welcome to another edition of Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily. Thank you so much for tuning in to the program today. My name is Dean Millard, and as usual, we have an absolutely wild weekend to take a look back at. Obviously, a lot of criticism from Thursday night, and then a lot more injuries on the weekend. Just a wild situation with what happened with Tua and the Miami Dolphins. And we'll give you an injury update a little bit later on about all of what happened on Sunday in the National Football League. But we have a really fun show today. We're going to try to get all over the map when it comes to fantasy sports and the information that you need to win your fantasy league. We're going to chat with Kyle Hall of the Broadway Hat podcast, and UFHL owners will recognize that name because he was hosting UFHL now for quite a while I was head of baseball. So Kyle's going to drop by, and we'll kind of find out where the New York area teams rank, 1, 2, 3. And also he's going to reveal his power rankings for the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. So UFHL owners, you will want to be tuning in for that because there are some interesting teams slotted into some interesting spots. Jamie Thomas of Winnipeg Jets Radio and executive director of our Twitch channel drops by every Monday to discuss 3 things he learned about the NFL. We're going to ask him about 2 Major League Baseball playoff matchups he wants to see and 1 college football team that has dropped the ball this season. And to Trust or Not, new segment we will unveil a little bit later on, where we're going to ask you, do you trust these players in fantasy? One of them is going to be a little bit different, but for the most part, do you trust or not when it comes to fantasy? So we'll have all of that. We might, I don't think we're going to actually be able to sneak in Fantasy Thunderdome. We weren't able to get it finished up, but we'll have a Dauber hockey preview double shot of the Islanders and Rangers, which is perfect timing to have Kyle on the program. So let's get into it with our question of the day like we do every time on the program. And the question of the day today is, what is the best lineup decision you have made this year? What is the best decision through 4 weeks of the season that you have made in fantasy football? Mine just happened over the weekend, and it was taking Javonte Williams out of my lineup and putting Josh Jacobs in the lineup. And what happened? Williams is out. We'll tell you all the details about it, but he was injured in that game. And Josh Jacobs, we told you last week that he had been a massive disappointment for getting into the end zone up until this point of the season. But we also said, do not bail on this guy. Do not sell low on Josh Jacobs because he was the only guy carrying the ball pretty much for the Raiders. And what happens? He exploded. He exploded over the weekend and scored 2 touchdowns, 140 plus yards. So that was a brilliant lineup decision by me because one guy got hurt. Not that you could predict it. But even still, Javonte Williams of Denver wasn't doing anything. So that was the best lineup decision that I have made this year. Would love to hear your lineup decisions. What is the best lineup decision that you have made this year? Was it benching Brady against the Saints? That was pretty smart, actually, if you did that. Andy Mack joining in the conversation. Him and I were talking about it last week. We were telling you about the players to get into your lineup. And one of the guys was Josh Jacobs. And Andy says, best lineup decision was starting Jamal Williams and Damian Pierce yesterday. Well, you're not losing with those 2 guys yesterday, so there you go. What is the best lineup decision you have made this year in fantasy football? Chime in on the Twitch message board, or you can hit me up on Twitter at Duck Millard. You can also get us at UFS Network on Twitter. So we'll keep diving back into that throughout the show. What are your top 3 Calder candidates for the NHL? That is what we are asking when it comes to our top 3 today. Top 3 Calder candidates in the National Hockey League. William Eklund is number 1 for me of the San Jose Sharks. I think he's going to get plenty of opportunity. The sexy pick was Owen Power. Everybody's picking Owen Power. When everybody is picking the same guy for things like Rookie of the Year, I get nervous. And I think, there's got to be somebody else. So Kent Johnson is the other guy that I think, Mason McTavish, obviously another guy, but Kent Johnson coming off the golden goal, I think he's going to challenge in Columbus. Going to get softer matchups than maybe a Mason McTavish might get in Anaheim. So that's provided they all make the team. And I think Eklund is the number 1 contender for me to win the Calder Trophy in the NHL. I think he's a guy that you should be looking at in your drafts when it comes to picking rookies. I don't think you're going to go wrong with either of these 3 guys. I think Eklund and Power have the most chance to play more games than Kent Johnson. I think if one of these 3 guys isn't going to play, it's Kent Johnson. I think the other 2 guys are locks to play a full season, barring injuries. So that's what I'm going with. Eklund, Power, Johnson. Sounds like a law firm. That's my picks to win the Calder Trophy this year. Who are you going with? Who do you like to win the Calder Trophy this season? Just going to pan up the camera a little bit. There we go. Who do you like this season in the National Hockey League when it comes to the Calder? As I said, Owen Power, everybody loves this guy in Buffalo. He's going to get a ton of ice time. I think William Eklund could end up being the leading scorer, and that's usually what happens is the Calder Trophy goes to that. So chime in, if you will, as mentioned, on Twitch. You can chime in on the message board, or you can also hit me up on Twitter at Duck Millard. And you can also reach us at UFS Network on Twitter as well. We will get out. And remember, at any point on social media, use the hashtag AskAndy. Andy McNamara, like the bat signal, will find you and answer your questions for your fantasy football needs. He will have what you need. Okay, so the big story tonight, I think, in the world of sports is the National Football League Monday Nighter. And by the way, if you do want to make a bet on the Monday night game, head to @DuckMillard on Twitter. Click the link in my bio, and you will get a 125% bonus when you use that link at BetUS. So head to @DuckMillard on Twitter, click the link in my bio, get your 125% bonus, and lay something down. Here are some prop bets you might be looking at tonight in the National Football League, and whether or not I think that you will succeed. Jimmy Garoppolo, 221.5 passing yards. I think he covers that. Jimmy Garoppolo has never lost to the Rams. So I'm saying cover that, and everybody counts Jimmy G out. I said it weeks ago with Andy McNamara on week 1 that Jimmy G was going to have a big moment. It's already happened. So I think he covers that. Cooper Kupp, 94.5 receiving yards. I've seen places saying he's not going to cover. I think he covers. I know there's quarterback issues, but he covers. Jeff Wilson Jr., 55.5 rushing yards. Yeah. If I was starting Raheem Mostert because of my fantasy, I would be not liking that. Tyler Higbee, I don't think he covers 41.5 receiving yards. And then the Cam Akers double shot, 41.5 rushing yards and 6.5 yards receiving. I think he covers both of those. So there you go. Some prop bets to make. If you want to go and make a bet, head to BetUS. Use the link in my bio and get 125% bonus when you make your deposit. So what do you think of these prop bets for Monday Night Football? What do you think of the game tonight for Monday Night Football? Who do you need to come through tonight in fantasy and get it done for you. The 49ers and the Rams obviously creating a pretty interesting NFC West rivalry, especially since McVay and Shanahan ended up on the sidelines. Rams 2-1, 49ers 1-2. And as I mentioned, the 49ers have won the head-to-head matchups lately because of Jimmy G. It's interesting. Well, I was watching Garoppolo, and he said his arm got so tired in his first start. And so after Trey Lance went down, he was thrown in, and he hadn't got the reps in preseason that he needed. So I think Jimmy G is going to be much better tonight. The question about the Rams is, what are they doing with the running game? Less than 3.5 yards per carry, with the NFL's third lowest rushing average at just 72.3 yards per game. Like, is this another instance of an NFL coach outthinking himself in Sean McVay? This is the lowest he's ever had it in his 6 seasons as a head coach. I don't know. I really wonder if there are coaches out there that are like, everybody's expecting this to happen, so we're just going to go away from the running game, even though that is what helped us. Yeah, listen, I know they have Cooper Kupp, but come on. Cam Akers is in the witness protection program right now. Even Darrell Henderson is struggling, and he got off to a good start. Now, there are ways they got the running game. If you saw Cooper Kupp with the jet sweep, things like that. But, man, fantasy owners are like, just throw us a bone, dude. Throw the running back the ball, or give the running back the ball, and by throw us a bone. And the other side, there's the passing game. And despite this, they're 2-1, where Allen Robinson hasn't really got on track like everybody expected. Everybody was saying, this guy just needs a quarterback. Well, he's got a quarterback, and Cooper Kupp has been the man carrying the offensive load again. But even him, just 51 yards per game in 7 meetings with the 49ers. So, that's the regular season. He did have that pretty amazing conference title game where he had a couple of touchdowns. So it's going to be interesting. I can see San Francisco winning this game tonight. I can see this is a game like last week where the San Francisco wins, but there's not a lot of fantasy production, and the Rams lose, and there is fantasy production. Andy Mack says he's going under for Jimmy G. He thinks Jimmy G is going to have less than 221 and a half passing yards. Kupp covers, Wilson covers, under for Higbee, under for Akers for rushing, and covers for receiving. See, I think this is the game, Andy, where they are going to feed Cam Akers. Like, enough screwing around here. Like, what's going on? Give him the ball. Give him the darn ball. Okay? I just think this is the game. I think this is the game. I don't want to swear.
What are we?
Werewolves, not werewolves.
So there's a lot of prop bets for you tonight. As for taking a look back at the week that was, man, it was a tough one injury-wise. Javonte Williams, as I mentioned earlier, ACL injury, out for this season. Things are not going well in Denver at all. Like, remember the movie Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead? How about Things to Do in Denver When You're Injured? How about Things to Do in Denver when you're struggling? How about Things to Do in Denver when your coach might not make it through the season? So Williams is out. Tough break. A lot of people were really excited about his potential. And now, what do you do if... Well, I would stay away from everybody in Denver from the running backs because Melvin Gordon can't hold on to the ball. I don't know what's going to happen. So with no Williams... I would not be looking at Denver. If this changes, obviously, then you're going to, if Melvin Gordon to learn to hang on the ball and stuff, that's fine. Jonathan Taylor, very concerning ankle injury, but the good news, he might play on Thursday. That was the report today. obviously keep your Jonathan Taylor watch going for this one for sure. Tua Tagovailoa, easy for me to say. So Tua's in the concussion protocol. He is not playing Thursday. We know how bad that looked. There's not a chance that they were going to let him play. He's not going to be back. Traylon Burks, turf toe, is going to miss some time, but not surgery. So that's the good thing for Traylon Burks owners. And Daniel Jones, strange situation with him. Foot and ankle injury, but Tyrod Taylor got hurt, so he had to come back in while they had Saquon Barkley in the Wildcat format. That was crazy. What's going on with the Giants? It's a bizarro world, as to use a Seinfeld reference. And Justice Hill has a hamstring injury for the Ravens. The running back is day-to-day. So those are the situations that you need to be watching coming up this week for your injury situations and everything else. Now, what did I say last week? I said, do not get rid of Josh Jacobs. We had Andy McNamara on. We did ask Andy. We told you, this is a guy who is carrying the ball all the time for the Raiders. And you had to be patient. It was disappointing. He was disappointing up until that point because he was not getting into the end zone. That changed in a big way yesterday.
Dynamite!
JJ was dynamite yesterday. Look at those totals in week 1 to 3. Those are definitely not, those, I don't even know, are those even running back 2 numbers? No. The numbers in week 4 are running back 1 numbers, 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. And the amazing thing was he was breaking tackles again, which had not happened this year from what I had seen.
You know, it was a team that you saw them develop more and more as the year went on. You have Igor Chesterkin in net. You can do a lot of stuff. So I think looking at the roster and looking at what happened this offseason, the Islanders really made no moves. Like, there's nothing that you can say the Islanders did that improved that hockey team from where they were last year, and they weren't a playoff team last year. You know, they had a lot of injuries, and, you know, maybe you can say getting guys back from injuries is a plus, but, I mean, they really had nothing. I think both those teams were in the Johnny Hockey sweepstakes. I think both of them put a lot into that. And but the Devils came out with Palat, which I thought was a huge pickup for them. A guy that can play both zones, has Stanley Cup experience, you know, can come into that locker room that has a ton of young players like Jack Hughes, who I think is just ready for stardom. If they get any type of goaltending, I think they shored up some of those issues. You know, I think the Devils had 8 different goalies last year. So between Blackwood being healthy this year and bringing in Vitek Vanecek there in the net, I think that was their major issue. And you look at the blue line, I mean, Dougie Hamilton, hopefully for them, isn't injured for most of the year. Obviously, he was a huge signing 2 years ago. I think PK is probably, you know, the one big guy who left, and you can actually say maybe that's maybe an addition by subtraction for some Devils fans. But, you know, Jesper Bratt is a very good player, really underrated player. I like the Devils team overall. I hate to say it. I think they're a good young team. And when I look at the Islanders, I see guys like Zach Parise, who they're hoping is going to play top 6 minutes. It doesn't really appeal to me. So I would go Rangers, Devils, Islanders if you had the power rank the 3 of them. But I hope there's a pretty vast difference between the 1 and the 2 and 3 teams.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm kind of perplexed by what the Islanders didn't do this year. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, they maybe thought they were getting Johnny Gaudreau and then there'd be something after that. But, you know, even from like the Bodie Wild situation where the NHL's like, yeah, this guy can come back and lose, like, no, I don't know. So the Islanders perplex me a lot. It's like they just
even the firing of Lou. Firing of Lou started off. I was like, why are they? Yeah. You know, what are they doing? You know, not firing of Lou, firing of Trot. I was like, Lou firing Trot. I was like, what is going on there? So, and there was never a reason given for that. And they keep on harping on, oh, they were injured. Like, this team is set to go. If you thought it was just injuries and this team is set to go, then why'd you fire the head coach? That's my whole thought process behind it. And you bring in a guy who has, basically coached under him for so long. It's the same same system, same everything. So very weird, very odd.
Yeah, I didn't get it. Watching from afar, I thought certainly that they were going to make a few moves, and when they didn't, I was like, okay, well, that's their prerogative, I guess, but it's bizarre. Okay, so let's talk about this Ranger team, and you brought up a guy that I think is going to get overlooked, and for fantasy poolies, Igor Chesterkin, I think, is a steal. I still think people don't realize how good this guy is going to be, and I think he's like top 2, top 3 goalies in the league, and I don't think he gets enough credit.
Yeah, I think when I look at my own fantasy league, he's kind of falling to that late second to almost a third round pick now, which is kind of crazy when you look at his numbers and everything. Obviously, Vasilevsky, you can say, is still a top dog. You think he's like older, but he's not. He's like, 28, 29. So it's like he's been around forever. He's been so good for the last 8 years. But when you look at Igor, you get playing in a division where I think there's not, like, when you play the Islanders, like, not too many goal scorers there. I think a lot of those teams, like, he's not going to let more than 3 goals a game. If that, you see the goals allowed was 2.10 last year. His save percentage is ridiculous. He faces a lot of shots. I just think this Rangers defense is very improved from last season. You could say, it's the same guys, but you have Braden Schneider, who came in halfway through the year last year, was a rookie, played very well for them down the stretch, played very well in the playoffs. He now has that whole new experience of that year under his belt. The guy on the Rangers who I think is going to make the biggest jump this year is Keandre Miller. He is going to turn into a superstar. Buy your Keandre Miller stock now and I've been harping on it for the Rangers, to re-sign him now, because his cost is going to go up more and more every day. This guy looks phenomenal in the preseason. He was their best defenseman, including Adam Fox, last year in the playoffs at some points. Obviously, they have Adam Fox back, who's just a point machine, unbelievable, will run the power play for them again this year. Ryan Bentzman, Jacob Trouba, other than just making every single fan base hate him with his hits, obviously turned into his best season as a Ranger, was named captain this year. I think that's going to do great for his confidence. But I think Keandre Miller and Braden Schneider make that defense so good. And then Zach Jones should be the guy in the 6th spot. Lieber Hayek is the other guy who's kind of going at it with him. Hayek's been in the organization for a few years now. He was in the Ryan McDonough trade. He's the last piece of the McDonough trade still active in the Rangers organization. If you could believe that, Ryan McDonough and JT Miller trade, which Ranger fans just shake their head at now. But Hayek's the last guy from that. They're kind of holding on to him for dear life, trying to get his game going. But I think it's going to be Zach Jones. Basically, is Adam Fox light, 5'10" guy, plays extremely well on the power play, very good offensive player, had a very good college career at UMass. I think when you look at the Rangers overall, the add Trocheck up front, who I think is an upgrade over Ryan Strome. They're really missing maybe that first-line guy. Lafreniere looks like he might be the guy up front, but they might keep the kid lines together of Hedel and Kakko and Lafreniere, which kind of was like the big thing during the playoffs. So everyone loved that line. They were kind of the energy line for the Rangers. So they're going to be looking at a guy like, you have Sammy Blais on your team. He's a guy who's going to get maybe the first look at that first line. Returning from a knee injury last year, had some offensive output with St. Louis, but a guy who really needs to prove himself. Barclay Goodrow could see some time there, had a solid first season for the Rangers. And, they're going to kind of rotate those guys and then maybe play some of the kids up top. But they really want to keep Vitaly Kravtsov on that second line with Artemi Panarin and Vincent and Trocheck. But Kravtsov, again, has not proved himself at the NHL level yet. This is his 3rd stint with the Rangers, gone back and forth to Russia. So this is it. This is his last chance. This is their last hurrah trying to make that marriage work. And who knows what happens there. So there are some question marks for the Rangers up front. And really, after Zibanejad, Kreider, and Panarin, and Trocheck, those big 4, where's the rest of your scoring coming from? And it's got to be those kids. And, between the 4 of them, I think Lafreniere is the one guy who's going to step up this year. Had a great playoff. Hedel had a good playoff too, but Lafreniere looks bigger and faster than last season already in the preseason. I can see him scoring 25 to 30 goals this season if he gets some top Kreider. He's saying that, him and Kreider are working after practice. He's working on, more dirty goals up front. And I think the thing with Lafreniere is that a lot of people kind of wanted him to be Sidney Crosby immediately when he came to the NHL.
Yeah.
You know, he comes from the same province. He kind of has that, you know, he was the 1-1 pick for years and years. And then he kind of came in during COVID, got thrown right into the fire as an 18-year-old, didn't have a great rookie season, and everyone kind of wrote him off. You know, he's 20 years old now. He's put on something like 15 pounds since his rookie season. He's gotten faster. He's gotten stronger. And he kind of played with that kind of snarly edge to him in the playoffs. And I think that really speaks to Gerard Gallant because Gallant kind of preached that a little bit with him. And that's how Gallant played as a player as well. And Gallant kind of said he saw a little bit of himself in Lafreniere, which I think would be huge for the Rangers. If he can kind of get a little bit of a nasty side to him, kind of crash the net a little bit. You know, we play with a guy with Filipino who's more of a skill player. If Lafreniere can go to the corners and get the puck out and get it going for Hedel and Kakko, I think that's huge. But I think he's the guy to watch up front to have the breakout. And then Kravtsov's is kind of like the, you know, who knows he's going to be. If he can score 15 to 20 goals, you know, that's a huge plus for the Rangers. If not, you got to look at the trade deadline and see what they can bring in. Like last year, Chris Drury hit every single trade right on the nose of who he brought in to kind of help the team out. A lot of those guys are now, all those guys are gone now. So we'll see. Obviously, the name Patrick Kane is continuing to float around New York. They don't have the cap space for him right now. Come trade deadline time, if he's not dealt to Edmonton or somewhere else before then, the Rangers could be in play there for him if that top line forward is not working out. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting. The Rangers have 17 forwards still in camp. You know, I think they're only going to keep 13 of them, so it's going to be a major decision of, you know, who sticks around and who doesn't. Guys like Ryan Reeves could be on the chopping block there. Julian Gautier, former first-round pick of the Canes, who they acquired a couple years ago, guy who just hasn't really gotten it going yet. He could be a guy who could possibly be moved out. You know, Ryan Carpenter was just brought in. He's a guy who's a major question mark if he's going to make this team. First two preseason games, he's had some big-time turnovers. And then Jimmy Vesey's back from the dead. You know, the Jimmy Vesey sweepstakes the Rangers won years ago. He's back after playing for the Devils last year, and he's been probably one of their best forwards this preseason so far. So he's a guy who's making it very hard on the Rangers to make the choice if they're going to keep him or a guy like Drayton Hunt, who had an okay year last year in his first year with the Rangers. So it's very interesting there. And then obviously on defense, like I said, it's probably Zach Jones or Libor Hayek as their 6th and 7th defenseman. And in net, you have Igor, but Yaroslav Halak comes in for Alexander Georgiev, who got shipped out to Denver because the Rangers couldn't afford him anymore. And, you know, I honestly think it might be an upgrade for the Rangers because Georgiev, as good as he was when he started, wasn't a great backup, wasn't good in spot starts. And Halak got some experience out last year out in Vancouver, backing up Demko, who obviously got super hot at the end of the year. So Halak looked for another place to go. Ended up with the Rangers, and he's a Ranger killer. I mean, every time they played him with the Islanders, he would beat them. So his record at MSG is ridiculous. So let's hope he does some good in the blue jersey this time.
You know, you don't realize when you hear some of the Rangers and even last year with like a guy like Ryan Strome, but you don't realize how many young players they still have. Like it's been an impressive retool on the fly with, you know, bringing in Panarin free agency and then bringing these kids along. The thing I look at is, yeah, you mentioned Lafreniere is probably going to get the first look. You got Capco, you got Cheadle, you got Dryden Hunt, as you mentioned. Not all of these guys are going to hit on all the time. So it's going to maybe be a bit of a revolving door. And I wonder if some of these guys who maybe haven't taken that step forward get dealt at the trade deadline to bring somebody in, whoever maybe hasn't taken that big step but still has some of that potential. I wonder if a guy like Kakko is a candidate for that near the trade deadline. Yeah,
definitely. I thought Niels Lundqvist was going to be that guy before he decided he didn't want to come to training camp and wanted to go somewhere else. I thought he was going to be the guy that could possibly move for a top 6 forward up front. You know, they got a first-round pick out of him in a very good draft coming up this next season. As you know, with all your scouting shows and everything else you do there, it's a very good 2023 draft. So Rangers now own 2 first-round picks. That could, you know, that's a huge currency right now for next year. Now, I think the only problem for the Rangers is not the picks or the depth of the team. It's going to be the salary cap. And I think a guy like Ryan Reeves, who I think is making 1.75 right now for this season, he could be the odd man out just based off of cap space. And if they get rid of Reeves, if Reeves somehow does not make it, which is would be crazy to think because of the leadership that he provided last year and how highly the team talks about him and everything else. It would be very tough to see if they do release him or what they end up doing with him. I believe he'll make the team, but if you do release him, they'll have about $2 million in cap going into the season. By the time you get to the trade deadline, when you accrue all that cap space, that you'll be close to around $4 or $5 million in cap space, which then can you turn into a Patrick Kane or a big time scorer, whatever team falls off the map by then. So that could be a guy to play around with if he could possibly be in a deal. And then the other guy to watch, I know he's got a long-term deal with Barclay Goodrow, could be a guy even this offseason that the Rangers could look to, because they have to re-sign Keandre Miller and Lafreniere. They're all coming up on their deals coming up. So, a guy like Ryan Lindgren, who I think Ranger fans have fallen in love with, he could be a guy. Barclay Goodrow could be a guy. They're going to have to get rid of at least one of these young, quote-unquote, veterans that they're going to have to make space for someone. So it's going to be interesting to see. As much as the window for the Rangers is wide open right now, it's also very tight based off of the salary cap the next 2 years being stagnant. They got to get to 2025. They got to get to that $5 million increase. And then you can kind of – the Panarin contract is really big, which is, I think, the issue. And then they gave the big deal to Trouba, which I think, looking back on it, if they knew what Keandre Miller was going to turn into, maybe they wouldn't have done that deal. But they're going to have to move one of these veterans out because the cap is slowly closing in on them. And all these young talent, all these young kids got to get paid eventually. And unfortunately, you got to win with these guys on entry-level deals, so you got to do the next 2 years.
Yeah, entry-level deals are all the rage. Kyle Hall is joining us. He is the host of the Broadway Hat podcast. I love when I have other podcasters on the show because the sound is so good, and your sound is incredible. But one of the reasons we wanted to have you on is because you helped out the UFHL quite a lot, especially when I was doing head of baseball, and you chipped in this year with your power rankings. And I love seeing power rankings because there are some people that get really wild. Like, I'm looking at where you have us, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much fine. I'm good with that. What I want is to under-promise and over-deliver as a GM. So I like being 25 because that gives us lots of room to grow. But tell me how you settled on Red Army at number one. I'm not saying I disagree with you with your choice, but how'd you settle on them as number one and Titans 2 and Gators? Go through the list.
It's funny. When I was doing your team last year, I was looking at my rankings from last year, and I was like, I had you last year. And,
yeah, so did I.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked before I even did it, so I had some inside information on what what was going on there, and I was like, all right, I think they might be last. And then that came to fruition. But then you kind of, I've watched your team build, and I'm like, you know what? They're putting together a very good team here, slowly but surely. I like your goaltending. I like some of the moves up front, so you had to get bumped up in the rankings. But yeah, I love Red Army's team. I talked about Igor Chesterkin. I think Vasilevsky and him are the 1-2 punch there in goal. I love that team. I think they're loaded on the top 9. I think they have a really good top 4. I'm a big fan of that roster, and I was waiting for them last year. I was just waiting for them to break out last year. It was the one team that I kept on coming back to every week. How they doing? Where they going? Because you got Kaprizov, Hughes, and Kyle Connor up front. I mean, they can score 45 to 50 goals, each of those guys. And then I'm on board with Lafreniere having a big year. Zegras, I know he got a little banged up in the preseason. I'm sure he'll be fine. Yeah, I think he's a kid. Yeah, he's a kid who's going to break out. Obviously, the NHL's trying to make him the face of the league right now. Like, they are trying their hardest to do that, which is great, especially because he's a West Coast, on the West Coast, grow the game, blah, blah. That's great. Lucas Raymond, I like him a lot too. All those guys can be 30-goal scorers, and that's your second line. So, and then you got Nyquist and then Matty Beniers, who I think is going to play a ton out in Seattle. Already looks good in the preseason. And Lincoln is another. I just love their top 9. And Max Domi, I think for a team in Chicago, which could fall apart very quickly, he could see some big-time minutes this year. Or build up some stock and get traded to a contender at the end. So I just like Domi there in the 4th line. And yeah, Quinn Hughes, I think he's in, obviously the second half, the Hughes brothers there. I think he's such a good player. Bynum's a good player. Drysdale's good. Cam Fowler has been solid for years. And Shesterkin and net. I mean, it's a very well-built team. The Titans, I like their top 12. I like their whole forward unit. They traded Vasilevsky, and you're like, when I saw the trade come out, I was like, what are they doing? And you look and they got Ottinger there. So I'm like, oh, crap, I forgot they had Ottinger. So, and I think he's going to be he's a guy who I covered the World Juniors, I at the World Championships 2 years ago, and he was the Team USA goaltender. And it was the first time I really watched him because he was more in a backup role in Dallas. He was actually playing the American Hockey League most of the year. And I was watching him, and I was like, this guy is going to be phenomenal. And it led Team USA. They almost got to the gold medal game. They lost in the semis. They won the bronze. And I was watching, and I was like, this guy is going to be – and I talked to a couple guys that play with him, and they're like, he's the next level. So I was like, he's a guy who I wish you can buy stock in players, because he's a guy who I knew about early, and I was like, just watch it. I would tell everyone, just watch this guy. He's going to be so good. He's going to be so good. And sure enough, he proved me right in the playoffs last year, being just an unbelievable playoff. So I like the Titans. Gators, I think I've been high on them forever. I like their team. I don't know. Anytime you got McKinnon, you have a chance to win. So, McKinnon, JT Miller, and Claude Giroux. And I think Giroux's going to have a really good season back in Ottawa. I like their decor, and Markstrom had a phenomenal year last year. When we were doing the UFHL Now show every week, I felt like we were making him, the goaltender of the week. I think he wanted the most of any other goalie. So as good as Vasilevsky and Igor were last year, obviously Igor had one of the best goaltending seasons ever, when you look at the stats. But Markstrom, he would put these weeks together where it was 3 games, 2 shutouts, and a 6-7, goals allowed. And it's like, okay, he might have a 4-goal game. He played Edmonton, he left 7. But, the rest of the games, he was phenomenal. So I think, they're really good. And then, Dynasty, I think they're a very well put together team. Another team who I think was a little bit of a disappointment last year. I'm looking for them to bounce back this year. And the Royals, they've been really good. They have a great team, and I kind of wanted to make sure they're in my top 5 because of the success they've had. And they have a really good top 6 that can score at will. And then look at the rest of my top. The one team that's tough to keep up with is Bentley Jacks because they make a trade every other day.
I know.
So, that was, again, putting the show together, it was like, who made trades this week? I was looking at the Bentley Jacks roster and seeing who's changed. So, Bentley Jacks, I think they'll continue to move and shake during the season, so who knows what they'll turn into. But I like the Grizzlies. I like Can West. I like the guys who own Can West, so I like to put them in the top 10. Ice Vikings, very good team, came on late last year. I thought they could have won the playoffs. I thought they were my one team to watch there. One team I have to say I misranked, and I got to apologize, is Outlaws. They're a team who I had at 18 originally, and they got moved down my final ranking. But I like the Outlaws team, and I have to shout them out. I like them. I underranked you. I was looking at it again this morning, and I was like, crap, I had them up at 18, and they somehow moved down. I don't know how I did it. But there's a lot of moving parts to this thing when you start building it out. But I have to say, the Outlaws, I do like their roster. I think they have, obviously they were going back and forth with Bentley Jacks and last year to get into the playoffs. I like their team. They got Panarin. Obviously, I think he's got a better year this year than last year. When you think about it, how crazy, people say Panarin had a down year last year. Guy still had 90 points. He wasn't scoring goals. So he just wasn't scoring goals, but he was getting assists. He was getting 3 or 4 assists a game sometimes for a week. So I think he's going to have a better scoring year this year, Panarin. He's already said he's going to shoot more this year. He said he's going to, quote-unquote, do more dumb stuff on the blue line. He's not. So, I think he kind of played a little bit reserved towards the end of the season. So when he gets back into doing his crazy stuff, that's when he's at his best. But I like Outlaws. There's some teams that I'm not going to call them out, but you look at the moves they made this offseason, you're like, well, I don't know if I would have done that move, but, there's some teams there. You can probably tell from some of the rankings there in the bottom, the teams I wasn't a big fan of. But, I think a team like the Brutes, I think the Brutes had a good close to the season last year. I think they're going to be a solid team. Yeti, same thing. I like the Godfathers, like some of the moves they made, not only in season last year, but some of the roster in general. West Coast Express, I think they're a team that can probably move up a little more too. I think when I was looking at the rankings, I thought they were going to be kind of like in that, 12 to 16, 17 range. So I think they're a team that can move up a little bit. Rock Republic, another team who, for some reason, I don't really love their roster, but they deliver. So, that's a team who I'm sure will outperform where I rank them. But yeah, I mean, I like my top 10. To be honest with you, I like the top 3. I really like those teams. The Royals, I think, again, could be right there again. But I love Red Army. I think Titans are really solid. Gators are solid. But yeah, when you look at the whole league in general, I think there's 20 teams that you can say right now, like, if they show me that roster, like, yeah, that's a team that can make a playoff run, like that, which is great. I think that's great. So, there's some teams that I fall in love with, and there's some teams that I kind of like, I just don't like this guy in general, and that's like a top line player, and I just move on from them. So
that's right.
So it's funny, but it's tough critiquing because, there's so much time and effort. And that's something I really learned with this league is there's so much time and effort put in by all these managers and all these GMs and owners. And it's crazy. And that's what I really enjoyed when I was doing the show, talking to people and having them on the show. This is your baby. It's like, and that to rank someone's kid, like, it's tough.
Yeah.
So, that's tough. And then like you said, like someone like will read this, and I like a lot of these owners. Like I become friendly with a lot of these owners. So it's very tough. Like I love the North Star guys. Like for me to rank them 27, it hurt.
Yeah,
I
they
really
were busy.
them.
Like they made trades every day. They took over from the Bentley Jacks with the amount of trades they made.
Yeah, and I really like those guys. So like, I had them closer to the bottom last year. So I'm like, I'm putting them up. Like kind of like I'm putting them up a little higher. So I like those guys. They're very nice there. So they've always been good to me. So I was like, I gotta try to put them up, but I don't know when to put them too high. So it's tough. But it's the league. I think there's a lot of parity. There are some very good teams up top, but I think last year was a great battle for the playoffs. Every week we were changing up the standings and everything else. So I think it's going to come down to that again this year. And then playoffs were great too. Some surprise teams in there making runs. So that's what it's all about. It's great.
It is. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, like you said, to try and get your head around all 32 teams and rank them. But hey, that's the beautiful thing about rankings is somebody's going to be happy and somebody's going to be upset. So it's the way it is, and it's the life of a ranker, right?
Yeah, I know. And it's like when you look at this stuff, it's like the one thing I learned last year. It's about man minutes, right? Like if you stay healthy and you got guys going, you look at the rankings of where teams finished and total games played and everything. If you were in the top 5, you made the play. Top 10 all made the playoffs. Yep. So if your team could stay healthy, that's what it's all about. And it's about the management and roster management is so important and getting those guys in the ice. So that's what's tough because Duckman's team stays healthy the whole year and they have man minutes out there. They're a playoff team. And I have you at 25th, which is tough.
Yeah, we'll see. I think we're going to be knocking on the door. I don't know if this will be our year, but we're going to try to contend, and then certainly in the next couple of years. But it'll be fun to follow it. It'll be fun to follow the Rangers in that New York area, and we'll definitely reach out again and get you back on the show. Thanks so much. Tell people where they can find all of your work and all of your projects. Yeah,
so you can find my personal account at KHallNY on Twitter. For all New York Ranger updates, I'll throw shots in there. Some of the UFHL guys here and there as well. So keep up with that. You can find me on Belly Up Sports, bellyupsports.com. And then my podcast, the Broadway Hat Podcast, you can find that on Twitter at Broadway Hat Pod. And we have episode number 100 coming out actually tomorrow, Dean.
Congrats.
Yeah, big doing. So episode 100, we have should be Hall of Famer Steve Larmer on the show tomorrow.
There you go.
Gramps is on the show. Great stories from him. A Blackhawks legend, 1994 Stanley Cup champion of the New York Rangers. So, very good show. We had Matthew Barnaby on last week, who is just a ball of energy and electric. So, last 2 good episodes there. But yeah, episode 100. Check us out there. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. But Dean, it was great coming on, and I've been following along the new show here. It's great, and I know you have Jamie coming on later on. Jamie's been a guest on the podcast, actually.
Right on.
So he came on last year after the Andrew Kopp Rangers trade with Winnipeg. So there's a good connection there.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, man. Best of luck with it, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You bet. There's Kyle Hall from the Broadway Hat Podcast. I love the rankings. Like, rankings are the best because you're going to piss somebody off. And, that's kind of fun sometimes, especially when you're a talk show host. Tell you, man, the best shows we ever had, post-game shows, was when people did not want me on the air because I disagreed with them about the Oilers. And if you're a fan of a team, you're ride or die. So you disagree with the radio guy or TV guy or whatever guy it is that you're talking with. All right, we have lots to still get to on the program. When we come back, we're going to get into trust or not. When it comes to fantasy, you got to trust guys. Can you trust the few guys we're going to talk about to get it done for you? That, in a little bit. We're back in a second.
Get yourselves ready to race at great heights to become the global sim racing champion. Create your crypto livery. Enter with the best designs. Enter to win prizes. Outrace your competition. Winning is all that matters. Watch the other racers in your rear view mirror. Gain massive exposure battling against the biggest names in crypto with a season-long race for the championship. Bring glory to your token. Drive like a champion, win it all. Be first or last. If you're not rubbing, you're not racing. Get behind the wheel and drive for your project.
All right, so that is the Ultimate Crypto Drivers Championship that we've been telling you about for a little while. VR1 Racing is a crypto-centric professional sim racing league. It's going to be a year-long entertaining platform that gives projects ongoing exposure. I mean, getting exposure is the name of the game when you're in crypto. This is a project that's going to have a lot of eyes on it and a lot of really good potential. Full broadcasts on Twitch here, YouTube, metaverse watch parties, design contests, and more. Really, really solid marketing opportunity everywhere with this project. You can get more details at uffsports.com/VR1. Really, really excited. I mean, you look at some of those cars and the designs. It's quite incredible. Okay, my name is Dean Millard. Thank you so much to Kyle Hall, who joined us on the show earlier. All of the show, if you missed anything, will be uploaded to YouTube a little bit later on in the program. But right now, we got to get to our Dobber hockey preview. And we just talked about the New York Islanders and the New York Rangers a little bit, and we're doing a double shot of these teams today. It's the Islanders and the Rangers. And we talked about this with Kyle Hall. The Islanders, I don't think they did and nearly enough in the offseason. I mean, that is not a playoff team. I'm sorry. Obviously, you're going to get production out of Barzal and Nelson, especially Brock Nelson, if he can reach the 40-goal mark. Noah Dodson should take a step forward and, likely could see softer matchups. The breakout player is Alexander Romanov, and not because he's going to get points, but because he's going to put up, 200 plus hits, 200 blocks, things like that you can fill out extra categories depending on your league. And I think Oliver Wahlstrom busts out. Now, this is the last chance I think Oliver Wahlstrom has. I think after this, he's dealt or ends up with another team. But again, I don't think this team is good enough. I don't think that goaltending is good enough. And I am Dobson, if he plays on that first line, is not going to get those softer matchups. But you're not putting Ryan Pulock or Adam Pellich up there. This is not a good team. I'm sorry, Islander fans. It's going to be a long season. And did they think Johnny Gaudreau was going to just fix everything? Really? You thought Johnny Gaudreau would just waltz in and the team would be okay?
Child, please.
Not good. So I don't know. What do you think of the Islanders? There's certainly some players to draft on this team for sure, but it stops like halfway through the second line. Depending on how deep you are, but not a fan of that roster. Now, this one, much different, as we talked to Kyle about. And there are choices everywhere. Like the New York Rangers are the all-you-can-eat buffet for hockey drafts. Seriously, they are loaded. You have, obviously, the bread man, Panarin, who's going to be a 100-point guy, I think. Igor Chesterkin, we talked to Kyle about that. This guy is criminally underdrafted, as far as how high he should be going. I might take him as the first goalie, honestly. I know Vasilevsky's been good, but Andrei Vasilevsky has played a lot of hockey. And so have the Tampa Bay Lightning. At some point, you're hitting a wall. At some point, unfortunately, injuries are going to happen when you play that much hockey. So I think I might take Shesterkin, the first goalie, off the board. Adam Fox, well, if I have to tell you about Adam Fox, I want your money. I think this is Capo Caco's breakout year, as mentioned with Kyle. If not, I think he gets dealt. And then Jacob Trouba, I put him in the sleeper because he's another guy that is going to load up when it comes to hits. You see, as you heard Kyle said, he gets everybody upset because he hits all their stars. So he's going to have massive amount of hits. He's going to have a bunch of blocks. Like you could be getting 200, 150 out of this guy. 250 maybe. So I think the sleeper on this team is Trouba. But, I mean, their roster is loaded with potential stars for fantasy. Like that first line, I think if Lafreniere stays on this first line, he's easily 50 points. So I think that prediction is low. You heard about Kravtsov, as I talked about Capo, but you could go Lafreniere, Capo, Philip Cheadle. You could get Dryden Hunt in there. Sammy Blaze is another guy that Kyle said to watch out for. I mean, there are stars in Trocheck, Panarin, Kreider, Zibanejad, Fox, Shesterkin, easily. You're taking those guys. No, you're not even thinking about it. They're there, you're taking them. And then you get into, like, the what-ifs. I think, I don't know, Ryan Reeves doesn't seem to be have a lot of cachet right now, especially with what Kyle was saying. But there are guys that you should target late in your draft. Certainly Lafreniere, probably a little bit earlier if he does stick on that line luck. But Capo Caco, Philip Cheadle, and Dryden Hunt are three players that could see a big step. And Keandre Miller, as Kyle said. So there is just potential galore with this New York Ranger team. And I'm so impressed at this really fast rebuild that the Rangers had. I am vastly impressed. And, you know, they also went through the change in management and coaching when they lashed out at the NHL. So this has been done very impressive by the New York Rangers. And like Kyle said, they're number one in the New York area. Maybe they're number one in the division. And then New Jersey and the Islanders fighting for the number 3 spot. All right, Jamie Thomas is going to be joining me on the program. We still have a ton of stuff to talk about. But when we come back, to trust or not, a fun little segment we will have, and then we'll get into a whole bunch more news when it comes to the NFL, the NHL, Major League Baseball, as you get set for the playoffs in UFLB, or you're in your final week of the season. I'm sure most leagues are over. We'll get into all of that when we come back. And as mentioned, still to come, Jamie Thomas from Jets Radio will join me very shortly. Back in about 35 seconds with To Trust or Not. This is Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily. Thank you so much for sticking around on the program. Kyle Hall from the Broadway Hat podcast joined me earlier on the show. If you missed that, it'll be up on our YouTube channel and out in audio format a little bit later on today as well. Okay, before we get into some of the other news and notes from this past weekend, something new, hopefully fun, that we are going to do on the show. And it's all about trust in fantasy football. I mean, if you can't trust your players, then what good are they? So we present to you this fun segment, To Trust or Not.
Trust me, please.
Can you trust? No one.
Oh, don't take it seriously.
Is it safe?
Sure. Do you trust me?
Don't trust him.
Trust me.
Trust me.
You're the only one I can trust.
All right, so when to trust or not, you're looking at repeatability. You are looking at the potential or the history. What is repeatable and how can it be done? So I'm going to throw out two guys today, whether you can trust them or not the rest of the way. And one is going to be very short, and the one is the rest of the season. The first guy is Tom Brady. And Tom Brady, as I'll show you in a little bit, has not had a good season. But I still think you can trust. He showed last night that as long as he has Mike Evans, you can trust Tom Brady. He didn't have Mike Evans, or if he's playing the Saints, then don't trust Tom Brady. But he didn't have Mike Evans last week, and he wasn't very good. Gets him back this week, 2 touchdowns. So I think you can trust Tom Brady. What do you think? Are you trusting Tom Brady this season? Is Brady back for you this season? It's a big question to ask. You'd think you wouldn't, but Tom Brady has not been Tom Brady this year. Take a look at these numbers. 212 yards, a touchdown, and a pick, and only 12 points in week 1. And then there's that Saints game where we told you not to play him. 170 yards, 1 touchdown, 11 points. Little bit better, even though he didn't have Mike Evans last week, in week 3 rather, against the Packers. 270 yards, 1 touchdown, 16 points. But listen, if you're drafting Tom Brady, you're expecting more than 16 points as a season high. And then what happens last night? He busts out for 385, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and 31 points. 31 fantasy points from Tom Brady. So that's why Tom is trusted, because he proved as long as he's going to have Mike Evans, he can be trusted. For right now, I still think Tom Brady doesn't finish as a top 5 quarterback this year. I still think, and I said it with Andy McNamara in week 1, Tom Brady finishes outside the top 5 when it comes to quarterbacks. All right. The other guy I'm asking if you can trust is Aaron Judge. And obviously not in fantasy, but in does he get 62? 4 games remaining for the Yankees. I think it's 4 games. Maybe it's only 3 now. Actually, I should check that. The season does continue. It wraps up on Wednesday. But I thought it was 4 games for the Yankees left over. They start a series in Texas tonight. And maybe it's just a 3-game series. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's 3 games remaining. So that graphic has even less. All the games end early on Wednesday, by the way. So with 3 games remaining, do you trust Aaron Judge to get 61? To get 62, rather. It's a lot of pressure. It is a lot of pressure. So, do you think Aaron Judge gets 62? Do you trust Aaron Judge? Negative. I do not think Aaron Judge. I think the pressure is getting to him. Texas should pitch him properly so he can, but I'm going to say no. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. And I hope Aaron Judge gets 62 or 65 or whatever. And I said he was going to get at least 65. I'd love to see that. Now, I don't trust Judge to get it done in the next few. Again, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see it happening. I really hope I'm wrong. I hope this is one of those reverse jinx where I make sure that he gets it done. Speaking of Major League Baseball, the playoffs start this week. And if things stay the same right now, this is what your playoff matchups look like. This looks fun. I mean, sign me up for this. This looks fun. What matchup really excites you? That's like, take your pick. There's so many. I think the Jays-Seattle matchup, whether it was in Seattle or Toronto, would have been crazy awesome. And it will be crazy awesome. But it looks like it's going to be in Toronto. If it's in Seattle, do Jays fans flood that again? I think the Phillies are going to lose to the Cardinals. I think the Mets and the Padres is the most intriguing first wild card matchup because the Mets have these great pitchers, and so do the Padres. But they only get to use them one each in this series, and then one of these teams' pitching staff is done after this. And if Scherzer and DeGrom are gone, like after one, like that's going to be a massive collapse, as Kyle talked about. Lots of talk in the New York area about the Mets collapse. Ultimately, I would like to see a New York, LA. Dodgers, Yankees. There's a great, I think it's a 30 for 30, but a great documentary about the 78 to 80, 77 to 79 situation with the Yankees, Dodgers. Great 3 series. Reggie Jackson was just ultra human. But I also wouldn't be disappointed to see the Dodgers beat the Houston Astros in the World Series. What playoff matchup do you want to see? It's something we're going to ask Jamie Thomas. We're going to ask him for 2 playoff matchups he wants to see when he joins us in about 7-8 minutes time. But the baseball playoff picture obviously could change. You know, there are still games to be played. As I mentioned, the Yankees open up a series with the Rangers. But it's mostly for wild card seeding right now. And I don't even know if it's going to be... Yeah, I think the Jays are hosting. I think that's already done. So Jays hosting Seattle. Tampa will take on Cleveland. That'll be interesting to watch for sure. So still, obviously, some things to be decided. Atlanta has the division. The Mets, San Diego, and Philly. Milwaukee still has an opportunity to get in, but they need everything. Their magic number is 2. So any combination of a Philadelphia win and a Milwaukee loss, and Philly has clinched that final playoff spot. But there are still things to get excited about. I mean, there is this guy and Albert Pujols' chase for 7 whatever. You know, we had a poll question that we asked people, what's going to happen first? Is it going to be Judge or Pujols? And Pujols got there first. Judge still hasn't got to 62. Pujols is still adding. And there's a good chance he is going to keep adding. He's past A-Rod. He's not going to pass Babe Ruth. But Albert Pujols did something very, very cool. And there was something really cool with Pujols and Serena Williams a couple of weeks ago, and Bichette, Guerrero, and Biggio. And now Pujols has some more symmetry. And don't tell me somebody's not pulling some strings somewhere to make this happen, because he homered in his first at-bat at Busch Stadium on April 9th, 2001, and homered in his last regular season at-bat at Busch Stadium on Sunday. Wow. Amazing. He's still on fire. Since the All-Star break, this guy has been clutch. Interesting that he only hit 2 in the first 10 games after the All-Star break and then really heated up. So 11 of his 22 home runs, half of his home runs have come in the last 41 games. Pujols might end up being a playoff MVP.
Playoffs?
He has hit the most home runs this year against Pittsburgh. 6 of his 22. And the Cardinals wrap things up against Pittsburgh this week. It's lining up pretty awesome for Major League Baseball. It really, really is. Obviously, if you missed it over the weekend, Shohei Ohtani avoids arbitration, $30 million for next year. 1-year deal. He is going to be a free agent still after the 2023 season, unless he gets signed. Now, 2 records, $30 million, the largest salary ever for an MLB player in his arbitration year. And the increase over this salary this year of $5.5 million is the largest ever for a player in his arbitration year. It's a 545% raise. He's the MVP for a lot of people. And they say, well, what's Judge's pitching record? And then that's what settles it for a lot of people. The Braves signed Charlie Morton to a 1-year deal. He'll turn 39 in November. He totally reminds me of the guy from Major League. The old religious pitcher. But he was a tick below league average this season. because he gave up a few more home runs and gave up a few more walks, but they still like him, obviously. $20 million in 2023 for his age 40 season. Sandy Alcantra will not pitch against the Braves this week for the Marlins. He threw a career high and a major league leading 228 and 2/3 innings this year. But his turn in the rotation finds on the final day. And outgoing Marlins manager John Mattingly said that he won't pitch again this season. Big workload. Now, the Braves and the Mets might be saying, hey, what's going on? But the sweep of the Mets gave the Braves the tiebreaker, so it doesn't really matter. The Braves will probably clinch the division before Wednesday anyway. The Mariners, they're getting ready to activate Julio Rodriguez today. They snapped the longest playoff drought in North American team sports on Friday, clinching a roster or playoff spot. And they're hoping that Rodriguez is good to go. It's the first day he can return from the 10-day IL list. He had a lower back strain. They got Eugenio Suarez back from the IL last Tuesday. And if nobody else gets hurt, they'll be full strength heading into the season. Blue Jays looking for Santiago Espinal to take live batting practice tomorrow. Could be activated. And Spencer Strider, this is huge. Oblique strain has yet to resume throwing. So some injury news and notes there. The NHL injury situation is not that great either. Cam Talbot out 5 to 7 weeks with a lower body injury. That hurts. The Senators just acquired him. All the Kraken goalies have been really good, so that's why Ottawa claimed Magnus Hellberg from Seattle. Taylor Hall week to week. Trevor Zegras back skating. Fabian Lysell is day-to-day, could play Wednesday for the Bruins. Logan Brown is day-to-day for the Blues, and James Neal and Thomas Hickey have been released from their PTOs. By the way, Calgary claimed Radim Zahorna from Pittsburgh off waivers. Arizona claimed Jonas Johansson off waivers as NHL teams continue to send them through, and the Pens are apparently shopping Pierre Oliver Joseph on the blue line. So there's a bit of a wrap on some injury news that you need to know about for your fantasy season, for your fantasy drafts. When we come back, our good friend Jamie Thomas is going to join us, and we're going to talk about the NFL weekend, Major League Baseball playoffs, and more. We're back in 2 seconds. Just after 5:21 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, the Monday Nighter tonight has the 49ers and the Rams. We told you about some bets for tonight. We'll drop back into those a little bit later on. But it is time now to bring in our Monday staple. He joins us every Monday to recap what happened on the weekend. Mr. Jamie Thomas from Jets Radio. How are you, my man?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Josh Jacobs got off the schneid over the weekend. I had a massive comeback in our fantasy football league. Like, dude, I was down 19 going into that Sunday night game in a touchdown-only league with 2 guys, and they both got 2 touchdowns. So, and it was over by halftime, so my night was perfect.
Yeah, you can sit back and relax at that point. I one of my half PPR leagues, I finally won. And then in our league, I won too as well. So because of Mike Evans got me a touch. No, sorry, Mike Evans is another league. Never mind. It's somebody. Somebody got me a touchdown last night.
Mike Evans got me 2 touchdowns.
That's right. I was stealing. Well, Was he on your roster? Or was he on my roster? Is a question you have to ask yourself.
Well, it's two different leagues, so it's both rosters, right? Like we're
yes,
sharing.
That's right. No,
yes.
Well, I could have taken Mike Evans off your roster and put him on my roster because I have commissioner power.
You could have, yeah.
You may have had a. But anyways, congratulations on a big win as the defending champion. It's very difficult to repeat in fantasy football, so I wish you all the best.
Yeah,
and we can't have Cliff Harris being the only guy in our league to repeat. Can't have that.
It's not fair. It's not fair to anybody.
No.
Mostly probably people in Cliff's family who have to listen to Cliff talk about all that stuff. Okay, so let's talk about 3 things that you learned in the NFL, and I had a little fun with it. The dude loves the Eagles.
Yep.
Usually the dude in the Big Lebowski hates the Eagles, but you love the Eagles as the dude.
I do, and on Andy's fantasy show yesterday, I put a shot of the weather at Lincoln Field in Philadelphia, and it was not good. So, I mean, I know the field was covered for the most part, but and it looked pretty good when you watch the game. But for them to fall behind by 14 and then come back, they didn't score to the second quarter. You're wondering, maybe, are they going to lose this Jacksonville team that's kind of the upstarts? And Jalen Hurts now up to 4 rushing touchdowns in the year. Jags were the number 1 rushing defense in the NFL. I know it was only after 3 weeks, but still, it's something. Philadelphia put up 210 yards on them on the ground, and the Jags only had 1 turnover heading into week 4 against Philadelphia, and Philadelphia forced 5 turnovers. So, and 2 of those were fumbles by Trevor Lawrence. So, I mean, I know it's 4 weeks, but the fact that you fall behind by 14 on your home turf, fight back, and win a big game against Jacksonville, who I think has some respect for a lot of people across the league right now. It's a big win. They're 4-0, and something to watch because Philadelphia is not boring by any stretch of the imagination. If they want to run the football, they'll run the football. And they have a pretty damn good defense as well. Because I had acquired Trevor Lawrence before the game, like right before the game. I'm like, I'm not starting him against the Philadelphia Eagles defense. And turns out that was the right choice to do.
Yeah,
also, Carolina Panthers. It's not like there's always this hot shot, new coach coming in from college football. And it just, for some whatever reason, buddy, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's not working in Carolina. And I feel for Baker Mayfield because of what happened to him and how he's treated in Cleveland. And, everybody loved him for about a week in Browns fans and stuff like that. And then, of course, Deshaun Watson comes on the shiny new toy and you forget about the guy. But I thought he would be able to succeed a little bit in Carolina because Christian McCaffrey's there. You have a decent, running game, but Christian McCaffrey can't stay healthy to save his life. And look at this. Panthers have now lost their last 24 games when the opponent scores 17 or more points.
Wow.
So that's not even that much.
No.
So it's just that. So, and they're 1-26 in games like that under Matt Rule. So it's just, I don't know, man. Like people wonder why coaches get recycled in professional sports just because it's hard to coach professional athletes. It's just hard to put it together. It is so much more different than junior hockey or college football. It's just, I don't think enough people realize that. And in the Canadian Football League, I tell people all the time, there's not many people that understand the Canadian game, especially American coaches. So that's why we see the same coaches going in and around the Canadian Football League. It's just, and if you want to win, you kind of have to tie, if you're a general manager, you have to tie your future onto these guys that are unknown in certain situations. But I mean, it looks like Matt Rule will be the first head coach fired in the National Football League, which is no surprise. And then Kenny Pickett, it's time, man. And I saw a very interesting tweet, and it was pointed out that Pittsburgh had 10 days to prepare Kenny Pickett to get ready for week number 4 because they played Thursday Night Football and they had 10 days. So I'm not I've never questioned Mike Tomlin too often, but it's time to give up on Mitch Trubisky. It's over, and you had this opportunity to prepare Kenny Pickett for this situation. I know he threw a few interceptions. 2 of them I don't believe were his fault, and Chase Claypool should be embarrassed with the effort he put in another one. So it's that was everywhere. So it's not like that's news for people. But come on. So Kenny Pickett time in Pittsburgh. I know it's easy for me to say, but when your starting quarterback is Mitch Trubisky, I just think it's time to move on now. And the division is kind of still sitting there you have an opportunity to possibly make the playoffs. So why not turn things over to the kid and see what he can do and his tiny hands. So we'll see how that works out from there.
I think a lot of divisions are still up for grabs. I mean, I think there's
Totally.
a lot to still decide this year in the NFL. There's a few unbeaten teams, or maybe even just one, but it's really like, you look at what Miami did early, you look at what the Giants are doing. I mean, there's some interesting storylines in the NFL that we sometimes don't see.
And it's like there's 17 games, and I know it's like a short season. There's not that much time, but come on, like the panic button, like how about Buffalo? They're down by 20 and they come back on the road and win. So it's just be patient here. And I know there's a lot of teams, like even watching Miami lose, and that's another thing too. Like I'm going to get on my soapbox here, but Thursday Night Football, you should not be playing 4 days later. No. That's just one of the most. It's so obvious that teams should be coming off their bye week and playing on Thursday Night Football, not the other way around. Playing Thursday Night Football and have 10 days off. But easy for me to say. I know Amazon paid $1 billion a year to have their games there, so they'll whatever it is. But man, it's insane, and we won't even get into the Tua thing because I'm just gonna get mad every time I feel like the Dolphins have kind of figured things out and all that stuff. That there's all the owner trying to get the coach to lose games on purpose, and how the Tom Brady situation, like you just want to. And the Dolphins are not the only team that has let a player. Or I'm not gonna accuse anybody of anything, but a situation like this where somebody's playing where they shouldn't be playing, especially 4 days later or 5 days later, it's not good. It's a bad look, and I saw it out there. Like sometimes it's really hard to love the NFL when you see a guy laying on the ground the way Tua Tagovailoa was doing. And I mean, you're 3-0. Why do you have to put him out there? That's another thing too. Is just, you're off to a good start. It's not like you need that win. It's a Thursday night game on the road. It just doesn't make any sense. But anyways, it's tough to see. And you and I both know, and anybody out there that has a brain, you're hoping for the best for Tua, because you just don't like to see that, and you don't like to see people put in situations where they shouldn't be. And I hope that teams have learned and the league has learned a little bit from this situation.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's talk a little baseball now. Playoffs start later this week. It's going to be so fun. It's just such a magical time. These are two matchups. Why do you want to see these two matchups this year?
Because I think first off, as a Dodgers fan, you want revenge on the Braves. But second of all, I think this Braves team is better than the one that won it all last year, which is absolutely terrifying if you're anybody in baseball right now. I just think the Dodgers are in a good place. I know they're banged up and their pitching staff isn't what it was, but why not see a rematch of this? Like, why wouldn't you crave this matchup? And yes, you could say you want Dodgers, Yankees in the World Series, but I just think these little matchups, but Yankees versus the Rays, the Yankees bats against the Rays pitching, it's just little things that you want to see again. And I believe the Dodgers and Braves are building a big rivalry here. And if you meet again in the playoffs, like, why not build on something else? And if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. I just think these are two, if they do happen, and there's a long road to go here, I just think these would be glorious, Matt. Like, I will watch every night and during the day, obviously, for this to happen. But Dodgers, Braves, I think a little more realistic. Yankees, Rays, hard to say. There's one step there that would see the Rays. They just got to get past, I believe it's Cleveland, to get to the Yankees at this point.
So the Dodgers Braves is so interesting, obviously, because of Freddie Freeman, because Alex Anthopoulos.
Yes.
Like, there's a lot of intertwined parts, and then the Dodgers lose and they take Freddie Freeman, and the Braves are right back in there saying, hey, you got to knock us off. So I like to see LA, New York because of the markets, but I wouldn't be disappointed in a World Series LA Houston where the Dodgers could get some revenge there as well.
Woo! That is juicy. Like that, I mean, that is something we would like. I know the World Series ratings, they claim are down every year. I just don't know how you wouldn't watch that. It's so busy. I just don't know how you don't watch the World Series. And everyone's like, baseball's too slow. No, it's not. It's the World Series, man. And it's October, and it's just, I realize football's going and stuff like that, but we got to stop. Baseball is still an amazing sport, and thank goodness they've made some changes to speed things up, and they got rid of the shift. And but there's so much drama in here, and you look down, like even the Mets and Dodgers or the Padres get in there again. Like please, like St. Louis, like you got Albert Pujols still going here, and please, like this is. Like Seattle ends their drought in the playoffs. They're getting the Blue Jays. Like there's just so many things here, Dino, that you like any of these matchups. You're like, okay, I'm watching that for sure. Yeah. So I mean, to have both New York teams in the playoffs, I'm sure MLB is just crying right now with that opportunity.
Yeah, they would just like the other LA team to somehow find their way into the playoffs at some point. But I love the Mets-Padres matchup because both staffs have great pitching and it's a short series. I think Albert Pujols, he might win a playoff MVP award the way he's like 11 of his 22 home runs this year have come in the last 41 games. This guy is scorching into the postseason. So I think I like the National League matchups a little bit more, although that Seattle-Toronto matchup is intriguing, but like you said, it's going to be fun, and just it's so great that there's so many extra teams in there and so many extra fan bases that get to participate.
Yeah, and it makes things like I know there's those crying and about the purists want less, and they would go back to the 4 teams, but no, this is great. There's so many. September was. You're watching all the time because of the chase and the home runs and Aaron Judge and Albert Pujols, but still you have a whole bunch of fan bases believing their teams can get in, and it's still going to be fun. So I know it's a money grab and whatever it is, but it just makes things so much more interesting. Yeah. When there's more, and there's just more opportunities for this type of thing to happen. So anything could happen. Any team's going to have a great chance at this, but it's just the way they've set it up is pretty wise.
All right, one college football team that dropped the ball, and this is the story of the weak hurricane, to quote Bob Dylan's song. What's going on with Miami? You're a big Miami fan too, are you not?
I am. Of course, everyone would say, "Oh yeah, you just jumped on the." Like I was Jimmy Johnson, huge fan. I loved the way the Hurricanes were so cocky, and the convicts versus the Catholic story when the Notre Dame and Miami had a huge, rivalry there for a bit. So they are that team that everybody loved to hate, but if you were a Hurricane fan, it was still, and that of course ties in that I'm a Dolphins fan. I had to have something like that. But now it seemed like they were on their way back. Mario Cristobal, they brought him back as the head coach. He's a great recruiter. He's brought some great players in, but they've just fallen off here, man. They were in the top 25, dropped out now, so it's just disappointing. But you realize that it takes a while to rebuild a program, and we've been hearing this for so long as Hurricane fans that this is going to be the year kind of thing. They're not quite there yet. We'll see how this goes, but man, I really like to see the Hurricanes back up there with competing with the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world. But it will not be this year, my friend.
No, it will not. In the NHL, here are my 3 picks for Calder candidates this year. And everybody has Owen Power. When everybody is picking the same guy for the Rookie of the Year, it makes me nervous. So that's why I'm going with William Eklund. Would you put Cole Perfetti on this list? Do you think Cole Perfetti is going to get enough ice time, or is he going to be in Winnipeg? Well, he's going to be in Winnipeg, but do you think Cole Perfetti is going to get enough an opportunity this year to get on this list?
To start, yes, because what Rick Bowness has decided, because Cole Perfetti clearly of a smaller variety of player, he's put him with Blake Wheeler and Pierre-Luc Dubois based on the fact that you want some size to protect him. 2 big bodies that can get him the puck, and if Cole Perfetti was a very good playmaker as well, is good at finding 2 big bodies like that, there's some success. So if he the more than likely he's going to stay in the top 6. So I think the opportunity is there, but I don't argue with any of your candidates, Dino. It's just there's some great players in the league, and seeing William Eklund earlier last year in San Jose. Yeah, he's pretty special. So I could see why you have Owen Power is the obvious choice in some ways. I get why you drop him, but I've seen a little bit of William Eklund, could see why you would put him and rank him so high, because he's a special player. And Kent Johnson, need we say more, another special player from the University of Michigan. So it's just Those are three but I would slide because of my bias, my recency bias, and the guy I see every day. I would slide Cole Perfetti in number 3 there in Calder Candidates.
Yeah,
just because the opportunity is being given early. Oh, and that's what we want. That's what you just don't want these easy people to hand the trophy over to every year. You just want this up and down. I want competition for these individual awards because then it just makes it more fun to sell the game. It's all about selling the game. Mm-hmm. So on a Tuesday night when Buffalo's in town in freezing cold Winnipeg in January, I don't even know if that's actually the date. I'm just making that up. But hey, watch Owen Power when he comes to town tonight. That's you know what, that's the best way to sell the game. So it's always tough to get people to come out when it's cold out. Well, why not watch Owen Power? Oh, San Jose's in town. Let's see this new kid, this whiz kid, William Mecklin. That's just the way it is. You have to do it. And the more young stars there are in the league, the better it is for the game.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's not every situation is equal. I mean, Dylan Holloway is not going to get the opportunity in Edmonton because there's too many guys ahead of them. So when you're looking at Calder candidates, you have to look at who's going to get the most opportunity. And I didn't put Mason McTavish on there because I think Kent Johnson gets easier matchups in Columbus than McTavish is going to get in a young Anaheim team. So it'll be interesting and it'll be fun to watch. Okay, I got to wrap up with this. Big weekend in Winnipeg, big statue unveiling of, for my generation, he was the man, Dale Hawerchuk. I am guessing it was a pretty emotional time in Winnipeg to unveil that statue.
Yeah, it was. And, Scott Arniel was a teammate of Dale's. Now Scott Arniel is an associate coach for the Winnipeg Jets. Like he was, and Paul Edmonds, my broadcast partner, put it best. He was kind of like the conduit for Dale Hawerchuk. After Dale had passed, a lot of people went to Scott Arniel to ask him about it. And we had him on the podcast, which is Ground Control, the official podcast of the Winnipeg Jets. You can download it anytime you want. I'll throw it on your show here. He said the mourning period is over, and now it's like to celebrate. And I found that was very profound because, it's not like they're not sad that he's passed away, but now it's like this was an opportunity to celebrate what he was. And it's, of all the knocks that Winnipeg gets all the time, I don't think, people here know this, but Dale Hawerchuk made this his home. He married a Winnipeg girl. He was seen out and about. He was just a person a guy of the people, right? And when I moved here in 17, 18, that's when they're kind of really I was here for the Dale Hawerchuk joining the Jets Hall of Fame. I got to talk to him a couple of times, and you just realize how humble he is, right? And that's the other part. You're sitting across the one part of our game, one part of what you and I do and what our peers do. The young kids are great to watch, but you and I growing up watching these guys, that's the best part. Like seeing Wayne Gretzky walk by is still, I still love it. Like, you know what I mean? I can't get enough of that. I can't get enough of seeing Tony Esposito. That I was in Chicago and they had just reunited with made all the Stan Mikitas and stuff like of the world. Like I'm just there going, oh my God, that guy, my dad loved that guy. So it's just anything that has connection to you and your family watching games growing up. That's the best part about what we do. So the fact that Dale Hawerchuk was sitting there talking, I'm like, sure, my parents and I didn't really like him as I grew up as a Calgary Flames fan. But you were terrified of him when he was on the ice. It made for emotional matchups, but it didn't mean you didn't appreciate how good he was. And all the time, like we just like, if it wasn't for Gretzky and Lemieux, where would maybe Dale Hawerchuk gets talked about a little bit more? That's simple. And we found out that there's a photo of Gretzky and Dale Hawerchuk at Rogers Place in Edmonton. It's the only photo of a non-Oiler in the building, apparently. I think it's in the dressing room, is what I was told. So I think Mark Chipman brought that up during the ceremony on Saturday. So I find that fascinating. And remember, like when they decided to do the alumni game, Dale Hawerchuk, like Wayne Gretzky made sure that Dale Hawerchuk was taking part of it. So it's the coolest thing. And then the face-off, the photos of Gretzky and during the Heritage Classic, like, come on. That was the game between Montreal and Edmonton was special because in Edmonton it was the first outdoor game, but this was Winnipeg and Edmonton, and those two had battled so hard in the playoffs in the 80s. So to me, that was one of the best alumni games, like Timo Solani. I can go down the list of all the great players around the ice. We don't have to talk to Edmonton people about who the Oilers were and stuff like that. But and then Paul Coffey was here, and he talked about how much he appreciated playing with them. It's just it's nuts. It is nuts. When these things come up, you start to appreciate you. Not that I didn't. You appreciate the game more because of how special it is to the great players still to this day when they talk about those times.
This is one of my most cherished artifacts. It's a Dale Hawerchuk autograph.
And you can actually tell it's Dale Hawerchuk's handwriting.
You can read it. You can actually read
unlike
that it's Dale Hawerchuk's name.
The 10 helps. The 10 helps.
Yeah,
and
the 10
you didn't tell me
helps,
it was Dale Hawerchuk's autograph. But it of course is cherished because this – another thing living here, buddy, like, again, I was in Calgary growing up outside in Cochrane. I didn't like the Jets, but living here, I realized how important they were and how hard it was for everybody when they left. So now that they've brought 1.0 and 2.0 together, you appreciate them even more. And Dale Hawerchuk was special. And from the more stories I hear about him, another cool story before I go, Dino, I don't want to take up all your time, is that Mark Chipman and Craig Heisinger, who was the assistant general manager of the Jets, they phoned Dale right before he had passed away to let him know that they were building a statue in his honor outside of the building. And, Dale got emotional and, everybody was emotional. And, those cool moments. And I'm so glad and thrilled, and I know they are, that they were able to tell Dale before he passed away that this was happening because how much he means to Winnipeg and how much Winnipeg meant to him. So it was a great weekend. It's too bad it wasn't a regular season game, but the timing was perfect for the family and everything. So that's how it worked out. So, but it was special. It was a special night.
Now everybody that comes to a regular season game will get to walk past that glorious statue and realize how.
I expect you to take a photo in front of that, buddy. When you get into Winnipeg, I want to see the photo of you and Trish in front of that. I'll take it.
Can't wait. I can't wait for that, my man. Okay, thanks so much. Enjoy the Monday Nighter. Who do you like? 49ers, Rams?
I'll go with the Rams, but I don't think it's going to be – I think it's going to be ugly. I just don't think the scoring is going to be very good. But we'll watch it anyways because we love football.
We do. Thanks as always, my man. We'll talk soon.
Okay, buddy. Take care.
There's Jamie Thomas from Jets Radio. And, of course, he's the executive director of our Twitch channel. Dale Hawerchuk, listen, I'm going to be really Manitoban here, but Dale Hawerchuk is one of the most important athletes to have played in Winnipeg. That's it. That's simple. That's it. In Manitoba. Not the biggest province. I know that. He's not from there, but he had a major impact, and great to see that statue in Winnipeg and his legacy being celebrated. All right, last segment of the show is coming up next. We're going to wrap up, get back to some of the things we chatted about earlier in the show, and give you a few news and notes that we haven't yet. This is Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily. We're back in just a second. Final segment of the show. We'll get back into a couple of things that we were chatting about earlier, but I do want to bring this up, some NHL news and notes. We were going through it really quickly before we brought Jamie on, but Cam Talbot is the big one. A lot of upper bodies on this list because the NHL is not very forthcoming with their injuries, but the big one is Cam Talbot. 5 to 7 weeks with an upper body injury, so that's why Ottawa claimed Magnus Hellberg from Seattle. The Flames claimed Radim Zahorna from Pittsburgh, and Arizona claimed Jonas Johansson from waivers off Florida. Everybody else cleared, as far as I know. It's interesting. Hellberg every Kraken goalie has looked good in this preseason. So I don't know if Ottawa, if it's a style that Seattle is playing differently, and that's why their goaltenders are looking good. But it's a good gamble for the Senators because they need a guy. They could have just went and knocked on Buffalo's door. They got enough goalies. Taylor Hall is week to week with, you guessed it, upper body injury. Trevor Zegras also has an upper body. He's day-to-day and is skating, so that's good news. Don't be afraid to draft this guy. Doesn't look like he's going to miss a lot, if any, regular season time. Fabian Lysell could be playing on Wednesday. The Bruin youngster has an upper body injury, so he's day-to-day. Logan Brown has an upper body injury. He's also day-to-day for the St. Louis Blues. And James Neal and Thomas Hickey have been released from their PTOs out of Columbus and New Jersey, respectively. So little NHL news and notes on this Monday. I'm sure there's lots of stuff that's been happening since we've been on the air, and I wasn't able to check everything, but a very busy Monday as usual in the NHL. Teams trying to sneak people down to the minors and things like that through waivers, as it always happens. All right, let's circle back to our question of the day. We start every show with the question of the day, and that is, what is the best lineup decision you have made this year in fantasy football? Best lineup decision for your fantasy football team. Like, this is your chance to brag. You know, everybody says nobody cares about your fantasy football team. I want to know right now about your fantasy football team. What is the best lineup decision you have made this year? Me, it was easily starting Josh Jacobs yesterday and benching Javonte Williams, who is now out for the season with an ACL injury. So that's my best lineup decision. I would love to hear what yours is. And we talked about this with Jamie. Who are your Calder candidates for the NHL this year? William Eklund of San Jose, Owen Power of the Buffalo Sabres, and Ken Johnson of the Columbus Blue Jackets. That's who I'm going with, but I'm sure you have a different set of top three. Threw out some Monday Night Football prop bets. I don't think Tyler Higbee, I don't think he covers, but everything else I think happens. And if you want to make a bet, the best place to do it is at BetUSA. Head to @DuckMillard on Twitter. Click the link in my bio and get your 125% bonus on sports betting. Bet on the big game tonight, prop bets that we were talking about. Here are some of them again. Jimmy G, over 221.5 passing yards. I say he covers. Cooper Kupp, 94.5 receiving yards. I say he covers. Jeff Wilson, 55.5 rushing yards. Cover. Tyler Higbee, no cover on 41.5 receiving yards. And I'm going the double cover for Cam Akers. This is where the Rams figure out how they won the Super Bowl and they start running the ball again. He's going to cover the 41.5 rushing yards and the 6.5 receiving yards. So take that to BetUS and get 125% bonus when you make your deposit. Use the link in my bio at Duck Millard. As for week 4, well, these guys ended up in the MASH unit. Javonte Williams, as we said, out for the season with an ACL. Also has some other damage. They're not even sure he's going to be ready for week 1 next year. So that is crushing. I do have him in one of my drafts, and I was looking forward to running back depth, which I'll have to find a little bit more of. Jonathan Taylor might play Thursday. He does have an ankle injury, but there's a chance he could play. That is very good news. Tua is out. He has a concussion. He will not play this week. Traylon Burks, turf toe, had to be carried off the field. He's going to miss some time. We don't know how much yet. I haven't seen it announced. And Daniel Jones, day-to-day, weird. He came back in after he was injured because Tyrod Taylor got hurt. And they used Saquon Barkley quite a bit. Not quite a bit, but a few times in the Wildcat. So Jones is day-to-day. So is Justice Hill, the running back for the Ravens. They think he might be able to play this week. But the guy who I thought was absolutely Dynamite this week was a member of the Raider Nation.
Dynamite!
JJ explodes for 144 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he was hauling guys with him. I mean, dragging his jersey. He was pulling guys. He was pushing the pile. He gets to the end zone twice. Massive week for Josh Jacobs of the Vegas Raiders. The big talk this season was Davante Adams. That has not been the big story. The big story has been the Raiders struggling, but 34 points in fantasy from Josh Jacobs helped them win the game and helped fantasy owners get the victory.
Dynamite!
And then there's a guy like Tom Brady. Look at Brady in the first 3 weeks. Very below average. But he was back in a big way last night. Mike Evans with 2 of those 3 touchdowns. 31 fantasy points for Tom Brady. So do you trust Tom Brady the rest of the way as a quarterback to start in fantasy football? I said earlier this year, Tom Brady does not end up a top 5 quarterback this year. Week 4, yeah, he's in the top 5. Weeks 1 to 3, not a chance. And in the baseball story, everybody wondering, 3 games remaining, that should say, will Aaron Judge hit number 62? Is it going to happen? Is Aaron Judge going to get 62 in the final 3 games versus the Texas Rangers? I say no. I don't think Aaron Judge is going to get 62, and I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But it just seems like he is really struggling and holding that bat a lot tighter when it comes to home runs. Doing everything else to carry that team. All right, that is going to wrap up another show for us. Big thanks to Kyle Hall from the Broadway Hat podcast. Joined us, revealed his UFHL power rankings. Very cool. Also, some teams will be very upset. And Jamie Thomas, of course, of Jets Radio, the executive director of our Twitch channel, dropped by to talk about football, baseball, and hockey. The trifecta right now. Don't forget, basketball will be playing, but basketball is getting lost in the dust in Canada right now because so much hockey and a lot of football and baseball talk, the Jays being in the playoffs. That's it for me. We're back again tomorrow. Eric Grossman will join us once again. Every Tuesday, Eric is going to join us on the show. So really looking forward to chatting baseball with him again tomorrow, and we'll see what else we can drag and who else we can drag on the show. Thank you so much. Have yourself a great evening. Enjoy Monday Night Football or whatever else you are watching. We'll see you tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on twitch.tv/Ultimate Fantasy Sports.
Thanks now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.